Hello, and welcome once again to Mieto Gaming, where we are playing Raid Shadow Legends. So this account, as discussed, is mostly focused on Faction Wars Normal currently. And I'm starting to look forward towards additional content, whether it's Clan Boss, Faction Wars Hard, because I'm almost done with Normal, um, pushing a bit more into Grim Force and some other content as well. So I'm very excited for a lot of that. But as I start thinking ahead at some of these additional game modes, I also want to think ahead on my roster. So I did a roster review and I discussed it from two different perspectives. I discussed where my each of my factions stood from a faction wars readiness standpoint. That's looking at both normal and forward to hard. I also looked at my top five, really seven, top seven champs that I'm excited about using that are either new to my account, relatively new to my account, or are coming down the pipeline. And it's pretty much guaranteed champs that I know I'm going to get, and I'm going to get them fairly soon. But today I want to look at it a little bit differently. Instead of looking at champs that I know I'm going to get coming down the pipeline, I want to think more about champs that I don't currently have, and it's up to RNG whether or not I'll get them because I need to pull them from shards. And I'm going to do that through all of the factions. So I'll look through each faction and I'll pick out the main character that I want, the main champ that I want out of that faction. And maybe also call out a couple honorable mentions as well, because I think each one of these factions have great champs in them that would be amazing to get. Right, it's not just one champ in each. But we're gonna start here at Banner Lords. So as I've harped on a number of times, just because I can't hide my excitement, I did just get Cecilia. So I'm extremely excited for that. She was my most wanted champ. So had I made this video a few days ago talking about Bannerlords, the answer would have been Cecilia because she was my most wanted legendary champ in the entire game out of any faction. But now I just randomly got her by pure accident while I was going for Bayek. So I'm extremely excited about that. But now that I have her on my team, there's a lot of champs I still don't have, and I need to look forward on who it is that I would want next. And I think we hear a lot about the pairing of Taras and Marichka, and I looked through each of the champs. I have a number of legendary champs here actually. And there were a few that I thought looked interesting. Aislinn, I think anytime the faction unity champ is probably uh, a wanted character, especially when you think about faction wars, which I love. I enjoy faction wars quite a bit, and I'm looking forward to faction wars hard. So I think in any case, the faction unity would be great to have. They also come in handy in other modes too, like siege, etc. But I think for myself, there's only one faction unity champ that I think is my most wanted in the entire faction, and in this case, it's not Aislinn. I would say for me, it's actually Merchka. I think she brings a lot of utility to the team. Most importantly, she is a reviver, and she revives on her own death, oddly, but she is a reviver, something that I am sorely lacking. In fact, one of the things that had prevented me from finishing Faction Wars Normal, I eventually did, but one of the things that was preventing me from finishing Faction Wars Normal was that I had a healer here in Manaya, but she doesn't have a revive. So I actually had to go through my Epic Champs and grab Ursula and bring her up to 50 in order to finish Faction Wars Normal. Marichka does have the revive, although it's after she dies. Here it is on her passive. Revives all dead allies with 50% HP and 75% turn meter whenever she's killed. So I think just having that revive is useful. It won't allow me to 3-star any content, honestly, because she'll be dead when she revives everyone. So can't 3-star in that case. But it's still nice to have just to kind of make my way through content in the game. Even if it's not a 3-star. But also like some of the other utility that she brings to the team. She's able to call a teammate to attack, whether now it will always be Taras if he's on the team, but I don't have either of them, so that's not a guarantee for me. If I was to, by chance, get Marishka, who knows if I would ever get Taras? It might be never, right? So if it's not him, right, then it will be some ally from her team. and I think that's always good. She does have a heal, which right now Manaya is my main healer in this faction. I would appreciate a slightly better. I like Manaya honestly, but appreciate a better healer. And she comes with this shield and a strengthen buff as well. And then here you just have a debuff remover as well as a turn meter full, which I think a lot of people are probably more excited about than I am. I think this is probably more useful in arena, whether it's live arena, regular arena, tag team arena, whatever arena. I think this is more for those end game players who their main focus is arena because they've already beat all the rest of the content. This is probably more useful for them. For me, I think this will be handy in a lot of cases, especially removing debuffs, whether you're talking about faction wars or clan boss or anything else. But I am just more excited about some of the other utility, whether it's this heal, which I think is better than any of the heals Manaya has. This call in for an additional attack from an ally, which my current healer Manaya, when she attacks, she's just attacking of her own accord, right? Not doing very much damage. In this case, I don't know how much damage Mariska does on her own, but it doesn't matter because she's going to be calling in somebody else that will be doing damage. And I also like the fact that she's just got speed in all battles, and this is huge, right? I think the highest one I have right now is 20, and I may have a couple champs with that. I know Manaya brings in a 19%, I believe. So this is a boost from her. So she's she's a boost from Manaya in like every single way possible. Even if her revive isn't perfect because it calls for her to die, it's still a revive, which Manaya does not have, right? So the way I look at this would be a huge boost for my account and for my Bannerlords faction, particularly when we think about the fact that she's replacing Manaya. Moving on to the high elves. So similarly here, I think there's a number of champs that would be useful. I know Solinar is all the rage right now. He's like the newest champ to enter the game, well alongside Naldua. And everyone's going crazy about this champ. He does bring a lot of utility to the game. As I was just mentioning, though, I don't have to deal with a lot of end game content that others may have to worry about, and I think he brings a lot of utility for arena and live arena, and he's doing a lot of work there. That's not my focus currently, so I would love to have him. I think regardless, he brings a lot of utility everywhere. I'm pretty yeah, he brings a lot of utility everywhere. Faction Wars is a 5, but at the moment that wouldn't be my number one wanted champ. This faction is actually the one faction where the faction unity, Fina or Fina, or however you say her name, she is actually my most wanted champ from this faction. She just does so much. I'm really going to focus in on. Okay, both of these are actually great, but I really wanted to focus in on the aspects that you only get from faction unity champs. And I just love this. So this right here, it places some buffs, which is huge, just always useful. Given doesn't matter the circumstance, placing a bunch of buffs on yourself, unless there's an enemy that takes your buffs and makes them debuffs, or does more damage against someone who's buffed, or anything along those lines. For 99% of the time, buffs are great, right? But it doesn't just end there when you're talking about faction wars. It's also or siege or anything where she's dealing with high elves on her team. You're getting an additional turn, so this costs you nothing. Right? I mean, it's on a 3-turn cooldown, but whenever you do use this, it costs you nothing to use it because you just immediately take another turn. It's also going to remove all of the debuffs from your team. So not only is it going to buff up your team, but it's also going to remove all of the debuffs, and these buffs cannot be removed. So they're going to be locked in place. So this, to me, I think this is phenomenal. It's going to increase a lot of the damage that your team is doing. It's done on a free turn. It also can be used for, and this is really, when you think about it, it's kind of a 2-turn cooldown, right? Because then you just immediately take another turn. So you're only going to be waiting around 2 turns for it. But then it's also removing any of the debuffs. So you can use it even at times where you're not, I don't need to buff myself right now. I just need to remove debuffs. Use it. If there's times where it's like, okay, I want to buff myself. I don't need to remove debuffs. use it because you're only waiting 2 turns before it comes back around. So this is going to be, I think this is an incredible skill that I think is extremely useful. Similarly here, now all faction unity champs have these types of, not exactly these abilities, but they have these ideas of these abilities where they, depending on the number of faction allies you have, they do additional utility. So once again, you can look at the faction unity champ of any faction, but in this case, I just think she is so good, brings so much utility here. So when we're looking at this skill, whenever a buff is placed on an ally, you're filling the turn meter, and we've already seen, and this is her passive, by the way. So we've already seen that she's got, so you got some buffs there. You have buffs on 2 of them, but this is the one that I was really focused on. This is placing 3 buffs right there. So you're filling their turn meter. And I don't know how this works, if it's per buff or if it is just like, okay, use the skill so you just get the 3 turn meter. My reading of this, it would be because it's a buff whenever a buff. So if you put 3 buffs, then that's 3 buffs. So my reading of this would be turn meter by 9% when you use this, 6%. Or I'm sorry, still 9% when you use this as well. So 9% regardless of which one of those you use. And again, this is on a 2-turn cooldown. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, but you're going to be cycling through with this. So depending on how you line it up, this is basically 2-turn cooldown as well. Like depending on the order that you're using these in. Now, yes, okay. So all your allies are going to be dealing more damage when you use your assist, you use your call to assist, which, okay, so it's counterattacks there. This is the only time that happens. Whenever a buff is removed or stolen from an ally, or when it expires, fills their turn meter by 10%. So again, we're looking at a lot of turn meter fill. Now, these are locked in place, and they cannot be removed. So I don't think they could be stolen either, but I could be wrong there. But these can expire, and so I think all buffs are going to expire at some point. These are for 2 turns, so then they expire. Fills the turn meter by 10%. Now in this case, because there's 3 of them, does that mean your turn meter fills by 30%? I don't know, but it could mean that. I think that would be phenomenal. And then of course you also have allies will ignore 5% of the target's defense for each buff on them. When you look at this, we have 3 here, we have 3 here. That's already 6 buffs before doing anything else, right? And these are 2 turn. They're both 2-turn cooldowns, or 2-turn. The buffs are there for 2 turns, so you can get all 6 of them on across the team. So that's 30% defense right there, just from her. We're not even counting the number of buffs coming from the rest of the team. So I just like a lot of the utility that she brings, and I think for the high elves, even though Solinar does a lot of amazing things, I also like Deliana and Lissandra as well. Like I think Elthorion brings a lot of great utility to the team. I think there's a number of champs here that would be amazing to get. However, for me, the most wanted is going to be Fina. Sacred Order. I mentioned both of these champs several times, particularly when talking about Cecilia, and that is Lady Noelle and Sir Nicholas. Those are definitely by far my 2 most wanted from this faction. I love the idea of Christmas champs, as discussed previously. So you can't get more Christmassy than Santa Claus and Noelle. And I think between the 2 of them, I would take Noelle. Now there's a lot of great champs here. I think Venus is a good champ, and she would come in handy for me, particularly because I have Cupidus. Maud is amazing as well. Gilsea just got buffed. Actually, I haven't done much. Haven't spent much time looking to see what her buff does, how good she is at the moment. But she did just get buffed, so she might be a viable option as well. But for me, it's really going to be Lady Noelle. When you look at this faction, one thing that probably sticks out to you is, well, outside of Siegfried, I don't have a reviver, and Siegfried's revive is very specific, right? The rest of his team has to die, and then he has to die, and then he comes back and he can then revive the entire rest of the team. And so he really needs to be the last champ alive, and then you have to wait for him to die before you can do it. It's very specific and not just easy to use. Kind of like, Ugo in a sense, except Ugo doesn't have to wait for herself to die. She has to wait for everyone else to die before, like everyone, before she can actually use it. So you can't just revive one person. So for Lady Noelle, she brings a lot of utility, and I don't know if I'm going to go through everyone's full kit because I think a lot of my videos have been very long, and I'm going to try to avoid doing so this time. But she does have, we'll to cut back on time, we're going to focus on what she does without Sir Nicholas, I guess is one way of putting it. But this is a great way to, I mean, this is just an A1, right? So you have a chance of blocking buffs, and you also have a chance to strip turn meter from the opponent, assuming they're under a freeze. Now, freeze can come from a number of places, particularly if you have Sir Nicholas on the team. But this does have the opportunity to strip some of their turn meter. This is like essentially not a buff, but it's a way to remove debuffs from your team. They mentioned sheep a lot in here. I guess because when you're under the sheep debuff, you can't be under other debuffs, I think. And so if you're under the sheep debuff, she can't remove other debuffs from you because you can't have other debuffs. But she can remove the sheep debuff. And so this is mostly what this is. And then there's also an increased speed that comes along with it. If you do have Sarnak, he uses one of his skills, but I don't have Sarnak. So if I was similar to Mrishka, where I don't have Taurus, if I was to pull her, I wouldn't get any benefit from that anyways. And then here's her revive. Now this is where the freeze comes into play, where after that you would be able to strip turn meter from your opponents, and this is an AoE. So this is an AoE freeze, so it's on everyone. And it doesn't matter if the if you actually revive anyone or not. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, so it is a skill that you can kind of just cycle through a bit and can add it to your rotation just to get a freeze out there, even if you're not reviving anyone, because it's not like you're waiting for Av or for it to come back. 3 turns is a long time, particularly if you're thinking about arena or content like that. It's not so long in like faction wars, but when you think about arena, 3 turns is a long time, but still, it's not so long that you couldn't use this just to get the freeze out there. I think it's short enough where if you need a freeze, you can just go for the freeze. Oh, okay. I didn't. You know what? I don't even know if I looked at her passive before, or if I did. I didn't even recall it. Um, but it looks like there's some turn meter manipulation essentially. So your enemies have less speed when they're in the freeze, and when cheap debuff expires on an ally, you get additional turn meter. So looks like there's some turn meter manipulation in her passive. That's always good, and she also has the largest speed that boost that you get in your aura for arena. So that's amazing as well. I mean, 30% speed boost in arena is again that's just massive. That's the largest you can get. Speed is the most important element in the game, in particular when you're discussing arena. A lot of times, if I'm fighting a similar team to my own, just depends on who's faster. And so if you get that little bit of speed boost, you definitely want it. So I feel like her kit overall is incredible. For me, the big things here are the debuff remover as well as the revive. But a lot of the turn meter manipulation, like with the increased speed, her passive. I believe there's somewhere else in here. Yeah. Yeah, so this is more turn meter manipulation. So I like that. I think that's extremely useful. Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot when I'm playing Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, is turn meter manipulation teams. Trying to see what those legs are back there. Okay, dead soldier. Turn meter manipulation teams. And so, I like being able to bring some elements of that into Raid as well. Moving on to Barbarians. Barbarians have a lot of great legendary champs, and I have a lot of great legendary champs in Barbarians. Haven't quite collected them all, so there's still quite a few here that I do not have. Unfortunately, there's some that I can't get, whether you're talking about Xena or RN Archer. They're just no longer around. And Chronom, yeah, you gotta get people to sign up and play to like level a billion or whatever they got to do. So there's a few in here that I'm just never gonna get. But beyond those, there's a lot of amazing champs here, whether it's Thor, Esme, um, for the faction Unity, Gregor. There's a lot of great champs here. But I think for me, it's pretty easy at this point. It's gonna be Odin. He does a ton. I think I'm going to try to speed through this, focus on things I really like a lot. So his AOE stun, I think, is huge, and that's something that I'm going to bring up on a number of the champs I'm going to discuss today. I love AOE stuns. I talked at length on some of my Faction Wars videos how much fun it was yeah, using this faction, for example, with Armand's just stun locking the entire like every wave all the way through to the end. Obviously, it doesn't work on a boss, but even the boss's minions just stun locking them so that they can't do anything. Or my approach with the Ogryn tribe, where I just had all of my Ogryns just had some ability to stun, even if it's not a high amount of stun. I was just having a lot of fun just using them, even though they're not the best group of champs in the game or on my roster. I still have a lot of fun using them, just because they all bring some. Most of them bring not Ugo, but everyone else on my faction wars roster for Ogryn tribe that I'm using on my starting five, they all bring some element of a stun. All right, even Bellower because I have him in a stun set. So they all bring some element of a stun, and so it's just a lot of fun, right? I love these team wide stuns, um, and so I think that to me is huge, and one reason why I would love to have Odin. But the biggest thing is really this A3. So you're really looking at, in particular with bosses, whether you're thinking about the bosses in Faction Wars, or clan bosses, or the bosses in Grim Forest, or Doom Tower, or whatever. Um, and this also works against HP and support champs, but I'm just more thinking about it from the perspective of bosses. The damage is gonna be based off enemy max HP, and I just love that element. It's one of the things I love about Cecilia's kit in her A2. And is it just her A2? Is it also her A3? I know for sure the A2. I have to go back and look, but definitely on one of her skills, I believe the A2 does the enemy max HP hit, and you know Odin brings that in his A3. That's phenomenal. So those two things right there just stick out to me a ton. And then of course he also brings speed in arena, but it's only for void allies. But this is huge, 40%, right? And I don't know if you would create an entire team of void champs. I guess you could. I would have to look around my roster to see if I could. But even though it's only void allies, that's 40% is just insane. And so if I was ever to be able to build a team of just void champs or void legendaries specifically for myself, that's what I would prefer to bring in. I wouldn't build my team up of void rares just so I can use this speed boost. But if I did have incredible void legendaries that were all great in arena, I might actually utilize this, to be honest. That 40% is insane. Moving on to Ogryn traps, what I was just talking about. So this is my stun team here. Those three, and then Bellower and his stun set. Um, you know, my Ogryn tribe it has a special place in my heart. I have a lot of fun with them in Faction Wars. It's actually good times. I can't get over the hump. I haven't beaten Faction Wars normally. I'm stuck on the boss on stage 21. So 3-star everything up to there, but I haven't done stage 21 yet. But I still enjoy them. I still have fun with them thanks to the stuns. But looking forward, and I mentioned this in one of my Faction Wars videos as well. I kind of got to get away from that, right? It's not working. It's not working on this level. It's probably not going to work going forward in Faction Wars hard. And so while I'm having fun with it, while I'm having a good time with it, I probably just need better champs here. And that's what this video is about. So I think when we look at the Ogryn tribe, there are a number of good champs. I wouldn't say that they're the best faction in the game by any stretch of the imagination, but there are some good champs here, whether you're thinking about Togron or Stock. There's just a number of pretty decent champs. Not more than decent, pretty good champs that I think bring a ton of utility to your team. But for me, I would actually have to go with Klazak. And I already mentioned how Cecilia was my number one most wanted character in the entire game that I could pull from shards. Legend as a legendary, she was my most wanted legendary in the entire game. Well, now I've pulled Cecilia. Klazog was my number two most wanted champ in the entire game. So he now moves into the number one slot. So not only is he my most wanted Ogre Tribe, but he's actually my most wanted legendary champ in the entire game. That I'm gonna pull from a shard, not like a guaranteed champ that I'm working on, but that I'm going to pull from a shard. He is number one. Um, so I'm still so my mind is still so blown away that I got Cecilia. So I highly doubt I'm ever gonna get Klazog because like I don't know how much luck one person can have. Um, but still, I would love to get him. And a lot of that comes down to his passive, where whenever this champ places a debuff on an enemy, he deals damage equal to 1% of their max HP for each debuff they are currently under. Now, I don't know if that counts, each debuff they are currently under. I don't know if that also counts the debuffs that you're putting on them now, or just the debuffs that were already there. But regardless, there's a ton of debuffs, and again, I'm thinking about this specifically from the perspective of boss content. Um, I'm sure this coming handy. I'm sure he comes in handy everywhere, right? This is man, it's got a 5 in faction wars. But this element right here, when I'm thinking about bosses, I'm like, man, this would go so hard. He deals a bunch of debuffs himself, and this is why I'm wondering if it counts the debuffs that you also land now, because this one alone, right? This is like 4 debuffs, so that's already 4% damage that you're doing to max HP, and this does stack up to 10%. But then okay, those are buffs, but he does also place True Fair. So he places 5 in total across his um, various skills. But also through with the rest of your teammates that you're gonna be bringing, there's gonna be more. So I don't think it would be too difficult to stack this up to 10%, and it wouldn't be too difficult for him to place a debuff. So you could have this stacked up to 10%, and every time he takes a turn, he's going to place a debuff, right? Whether it's placing True Fair or oh, you know what? I did not. Okay, cannot be resisted. I thought it was going to say cannot be placed. This debuff cannot be resisted by bosses. So no matter what, you're going to be placing a debuff, right? Um, Even if you never use this, I mean, I do like this guy is really built. I didn't realize that he is built specifically for bosses. If a boss is present in the ground, I've read his kit a number of times and never if it did stick out to me, I forgot. But I don't think I ever realized that like literally there's a bunch of boss call outs here. I always just looked at this and I'm like, oh yeah, this guy is like made for bosses, but it's literally spelled out in his kit. If a boss is there, this cannot be resisted by bosses. All right, so these bosses cannot be resisted by bosses. Wow, I never noticed all these call outs. But regardless, where it never really stood out to me, I guess, so much that I'm like, whoa. But regardless, he plays a bunch of debuffs himself. And of course, with the rest of the buffs that you're going to be getting from the rest of the team, I do think that this is always going to be at 10%. So every time he's taking a turn, essentially, unless you use this, but there's really no need to. Every time you're taking a turn, you're doing 10% damage, like max HP damage to the boss. Without any damage, if the rest of your team are nothing but debuffers, like they do no damage, they just drop debuffs and that's it. In 10 turns, the boss is dead. You're doing 10% max HP damage every time he comes around. And so even if this guy is, the only person doing any damage, like the boss is going down. He's going down hard. So Klazag just brings so much utility and he's got defense in all battles, but a lot of stuff is just an afterthought. This passive is just insane. And then the fact that I didn't care what the debuffs are. Right? I didn't even bother paying much attention to what the debuffs were, as long as they're just debuffs, right? That's all I really care about because of the fact that they're going to be doing damage for each one of those. Um, and so, Klazag he's a phenomenal champ for bosses, and I would love to have him on my roster, and I would love to have him on my Ogryn tribes. All right, moving on to Lizardmen. So I do actually have the faction unity champ for Lizardmen, Teox. He's really good. or at least I like him. Okay, seems like everybody agrees. Wow, 5 makes sense. I think, especially when you're discussing faction wars and probably siege. Siege even in here? Oh, I guess it's not. So I guess they just count that as like arena. Arena defense is probably just where that kind of fits. But I think anytime you have a faction unity champ, they're probably gonna be very useful in faction wars, right? I think that just kind of goes without saying. But it's nice to see that he's useful other places. I haven't really used him anywhere else. I don't really see. Man, 5 in Hydra. I really need to start looking at my team and thinking about how to utilize them outside of faction wars because I have a lot of great champs that I may not be utilizing to their full strength. But beyond that, enough of the champs I do have. Moving on to the champs I do not have, but would be excited to get added into my account. So, and again, this is like champs that are RNG based champs that you have no guaranteed way of getting. So Ramantu's not even going to count here. But with that in mind, there's 2 that really stick out to me. That's Sulfurion and Fighty. Now, I think if I was starting my account from scratch and I had the option to choose one of these 2, at least for Lizardmen, right? I think there's other champs in the game that I would choose ahead of either of them. But if I was rebuilding my Lizardmen roster from scratch, let's say, and I had the option to start with one of these 2, I would actually pick Sulfurion. He does a ton. And I did say I'm not going to spend too much time on these champs because I don't want my videos to be going an hour and a half every single time like the rest of them. But just real quick, he places shields and HP burns, and he has a great revive on him. And I think this also, okay, this is a turn meter fill. I was actually thinking it was a heal, but it's a turn meter fill, which is also extremely useful. So just overall, he does a lot of great things. However, my Lizardman already has a ton of heals and it already has a ton of revives and things. And, just to kind of find out how crazy this actually is. Yeah, so ignore the Predator for a second. I got dupes of my healers and revivers, right? Like this. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually Rosine. I thought I had a dupe of Pytheon, but okay. Amok and Donatello, I have dupes of them, right? So like I have a ton of heals and revives in this faction. 2 Amoks, 2 Donnies, 1 Pythion. That right there is 5 healers and and that's actually what I had up until I got, Predator. I had a team of revivers and healers, and that's what I was initially doing. That got me all the way to stage like 20, which it took forever, but it got me all the way up to stage 21 just by healing and reviving myself all the time. But I already have so much of that now, like if I was starting this from scratch, I'll take Sulfurion because he does so much. But now, given the roster that I currently have in Lisbon, I would actually take Fighty instead. I mean, now he does have this heal here. But beyond that, he's got this AoE attack that I love. It also removes all buffs. So it's a buff stripper and it places buffs on your oh, I'm sorry. I take that back. He places debuffs on them and then fills the turn meters of all allies. This is a loaded this is a loaded skill right here. So it is an AoE. So that brings, as I've mentioned in the past, like what I did with Belware, where I threw him a stun set, and because all of his stuff is AoEs, you have a chance every single time. So I love AoE shenanigans, right? I would not put Fighty in a stun set, but I just love AoE shenanigans in general. So anytime I see an AoE, I get excited by it. But in this case, it's not just an AoE, but it's actually an AoE buff stripper, right? Which is also phenomenal. And this is, something that I had discussed before with Odin, and I'll probably still bring up a couple more. I don't know, with Odin it was stuns, but I'll probably bring this up a couple times in this discussion as well. Some of these AoE attacks with additional utility, whether it's an AoE stun or an AoE buff stripper, I love, 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 love them. These are like my favorite skills in the game, right? Outside of maybe max HP damages, I just love these AoE skills that bring extra utility. The stuns or the poisons, honestly, I prefer stun over poison, but if it's an AoE stun, AoE poison, AoE buff remover, actually, I prefer both stun and buff remover um, uh, over poison, but even AoE poison is good. I just love it all. But then not only is it doing that, it's also adding these debuffs onto the team and filling your team meter. So there's so much going on, and not just this character's team meter, but all allies. It's just so much happening on that skill. And then for this one, this is the big thing here. This is like whatever, I guess, but this actually decreases the cooldown of all ally skills by 3 turns. That pretty much is that turns every. And I think Donnie has something like that too. Bus was it 10 meters? Yeah, decrease the cooldown level. So you could really psych with both of those. I didn't even think about that synergy until right now. And I had, made this list previously and I looked through all these kits previously and I didn't even make that synergy till right now. I mean, with both Fighty and Donnie on this in this faction, make my way through faction wars hard. Be so much easier with a Fighty on the squad, right? Having that AoE buff remover, um, having this skill cooldown, and then just for funsies because for me the lizard men are just all about the lizard men and the Sylvan Watcher squads for me are just all about just healing. So that just given the rosters that I have, and so just for funsies having having this heal, why not? He might as well have a heal, right? Might as well. You gotta stick to the theme. So I feel like that would be my most wanted champ given my current lizard men roster. I would be thrilled with Sulfurion, and I actually think Sulfurion is actually a better champ overall. But just given my roster, Fighty would fit my roster so much better. Moving on to Skinwalkers. So Skinwalkers, I haven't made my way through the Skinwalkers Faction Wars normal just yet. Stuck on stage 21, similar to the Ogryn tribe, similar to Knights Revenant, similar to a couple other factions. All the ones that I'm stuck on are on stage 21. Currently, there's 5. Soon to be 4 tomorrow, as I will beat Dark Elves tomorrow, so that'll just be 4. But I think there's a number of great champs here. Now the thing is, some of these champs I'm going to get. Cleopteryx, I don't actually know how good. Oof. Maybe she's not good. I don't know. But regardless, Cleopteryx is someone I'm going to be getting here. Marius, I hear he's phenomenal. I've faced him a couple of times in Arena. He seems to be phenomenal. He's got AoE that just like obliterates my entire. Yeah, I guess it's this one. Obliterates the entirety of my team. And this grants an extra turn. So he's able to do that and then immediately just do that and wipe my team out. But, I think both those, well, at least Marius is a great champ. However, he's not someone that I'm going to be pulling from a shard. I'm working my way through his missions now. So he doesn't count for this list. Just given the champs that do count, looking through some, and I know, Bambus just got a buff, so maybe Bambus is better now. But just thinking through, when I've read through these kits over my time of playing, the ones that I actually want the most are going to be Nishak and Gwendolyn, and I'm going to give the edge to Nishak here. I have a lot of fun with Kraz in Ogryn Tribe, just dropping his bombs. I have a really good time with that, and so I think here I would enjoy doing that with Nishak as well. And he actually has 2 abilities here that drop bombs, which is even more fun. And then he's got a way here to just kind of set the bombs off and blow everyone up. And then also on top of that, just in case anyone survives, increases the duration of any poisons that are currently on them. And you can see here, every time a bomb debuff is placed by the champion, it detonates or is removed. That's where the poisons come from. So if anybody does survive the bombs, once they explode, the poisons will get them. And so Nishak is just he's a really cool champ. I like him quite a bit. I don't have him, so I haven't used him. I've seen him in arena. Normally, as long as I outspeed the other team, I'll kill him really quickly and I won't have any issues with him. But if the other team outspeeds me and they have like, Arbiter or something, adding speed to Nishak to get him out ahead of my team, and he drops those bombs on me, a lot of times it's over. I think it's been a couple times where I've survived, but a lot of times it's just over. So I would be very excited to add him to my roster. And again, I've had a lot of fun with Cross, and I've heard he's even better than Cross, because his follow up turn is guaranteed, where Cross isn't. So I think he would be my main champ there. Here, there's in the orcs, I have a ton of legendaries in the orcs. I'm not impressed by all of them. Grohawk is just not impressed with me. Bells has never been impressed with me. Khan has never been impressive with me. Honestly, I don't think Artak has been impressed with me either. I think he's really highly rated. Yeah, he's extremely highly rated. I like all of his HP burns, but there's so many HP burns here. Tila has HP burns, and I actually like her more. Um, Ashnar has HP burns, and of course I like him more. He's a mythical. Um, so Artak just he hasn't blown me away. Shayak, he helps Krokod, but outside of that, I'm not really blown away by him either. Looks like other people aren't either. So that's good. Good to know that I'm in the majority there. Although he may have a lot of those reviews are probably from before Krokod was around, so they probably would rate him differently now. But even with Krokod, I think that's just more you're making Krokod better. Shaq himself still isn't all that great. So I haven't really been blown away by a lot of the legendaries I do have. There are a few here that I would absolutely love to have. And Gaylet is near the top. I think, especially with this, right, that AoE stun that I talk about. And then a debuff remover is also great. I actually slightly prefer AoE buff removal. I just feel like that helps me get through content a little bit easier. However, if you think about something that's like arena or something like that, I think removing debuffs from your team, because there's going to be a lot of stuns or sleeps or whatever the case may be, thrown at your team to try to like take you out, and each one of those turns are precious. So I do think in arena, debuff removals might actually be a little bit more important than a buff stripper, although both are still important in that content as well. But for me, I actually prefer like something like this, right? AoE stun or an AoE buff remover. Um, but in the other case, he would be amazing to have on my roster, but he's not who I'm going with here. I'm actually going with Raka. Uh, I do have Tagore, but I feel like she would be such a huge improvement over him. Um, so she's got a heal right on her A1. It goes up to a 30% 30% heal for one ally. And then she has this debuff remover, but also a shield and a buff of increase attack, which is great. And then also the revive. And so I think, with this heal and this revive, I think, it kind of replaces Tagore. And this is a all team revive. Now, this is a single target heal, where I believe Tagore is like the opposite. I believe Tagore has a full team heal and a single target revive. She's also got all speed and battles, which is nice. Um, yeah, yeah, but his heal isn't all that incredible. Well, 35%, that's nothing to sneeze at, and it is a full team heal. So it's actually better than I was thinking. Um, but regardless, I think like this. Oh, I am way off here. My apologies. This is revives all dead allies. I don't know why I thought he had a single target revive. I might be thinking of something else. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here with Raka. Maybe Tagore is just fine. You know what? I'm gonna actually change my selection here. It's probably the only time I'll do this, but we'll see. We'll see when we get to the rest of the factions. It's been a little bit since I went through Tagore's kit. Maybe I should have read the replacements prior to doing this video. But actually, I think I would go with Gallett in this case. Raka is a great champ still, but for how I would be using her, I do like the removes all debuffs, but I mean, he's got that. Oh, not Gaelic. Wow, how far is this guy? But, he's got that himself as well. So I wouldn't really need that. So for me, I'm thinking, Tagore is just fine. There might be an improvement on him in other ways, maybe cooldowns or something. I mean, her heal doesn't have a cooldown. So you could make that argument. But honestly, Tagore is just fine. So I think I'm going to switch my answer to Gaelic for orcs. I'm glad I went and looked at Tagore's kit. It's been a little bit since I finished the orcs faction war, so I haven't used Tagore in a little bit. It's been probably 2 months or so since I finished their faction war crypt. Now moving on to Demon Spawn. Similar to other factions, there's a number of champs here that I think are great and that I would love to have. I know a lot of people love Duchess Lilito, and I agree she's got a lot of great utility. For me, I actually really like Preva, and I already have her on my roster. You know, it's a single target revive. And she doesn't do much damage or anything. Her heal is fine. Like, it's not like blowing anybody away. It's 35%. It's not like whoa, not like 100% or something. But actually, just I like her. Like I like this team. This team is crappy. It's not the best. Actually, a number of these champs kind of suck, to be honest with you. But I'm looking at you, Crew Traxa. But like this team is extremely scrappy. I would if I could give awards to each one of my faction wars teams. And I did actually beat this faction wars, I guess, because they are all legendaries. So I'm saying they suck, but they are all legendaries, right? So they don't suck that much. Just in the grand scheme of things, Crew Track said you need some help. Same with Countess Licks. Um, but this team is so scrappy. Like there's times where things were just the timing was just perfect, right? I think I can't, yeah, it's Crew Tracks that I kind of can put a revive on it. Here I go going through everyone's kit again, right? When I said I wasn't going to waste time doing this. But real quick, just to discuss how this team is so scrappy, she puts a revive on death on herself. And so that saves my single target revive on Prava. And Crew Tracks was always a target because the enemy AI already knows like, oh man, Cretraxa sucks so much. We're gonna be able to kill her in just a couple of hits. And so she was always the target. So I didn't have to worry about anything. Nobody's worried. Nobody was attacking the rest of my team. They're attacking Cretraxa. She puts a revive on Death on, and she comes right back. So I save my heal and I save my single target revive for when I need them. And then like somebody will come around where Countess Lix is getting ready to die or something, and then Grakos will throw on his block damage buff. And it's only one turn, like it's not super long or anything, but that one turn is enough for me to cycle back around to Preva and use her heal. Like this team is just super scrappy, right? They're just like skating, not skating. They're just like skirting by like everything, right? Like they're just three-starring things, but they are three-starring it, and it's not like I have to replay the levels or the floors or whatever the stages. I just play the stage once, and they three-star it, barely three-star it, and I've had to use my revive on my second to last turn or something. But like they were just skirting by just by the tip of their nose, but they were doing it and it was working. And I absolutely loved it. Or Druckstar would land his. He was barely ever landing this provoke guy. It says 40%, and I think it buffs even higher to like 60%. And it's an AOE. For some reason, there were like entire turns where nobody would get provoked. I'm like, what the heck, man? It's like 5 people out there. How'd you? It was 60% AOE. You didn't provoke not a single one of them. But like, it would be like right at the end, when my character's about to die. My single target revive is on cooldown because I had to use it for one other character. And all of a sudden, this provoke would hit. Just all of a sudden, would be the only time it would hit for the entire stage, and it would hit that one time. And so they would attack Druckstar instead. And that would be enough time for the heal to come around, or for the block damage to come around, or like just be like perfect timing for it to happen. So I actually really enjoy my Demon Spawn team. They're extremely scrappy and did a lot of good. So even though Duchess Libidu would be a huge improvement over Preva, she's not my most wanted. It's because I'm fine with Preva. I'm enjoying her quite a bit. Who I actually would take, and Lamasu is a guaranteed, so she's not even in this conversation. I like Helicath as well, but I would take Cheshire actually. So he's got that single target damage, but he also has an AoE here, and this AoE does quite a bit of damage. It's based on both attack and speed, and it does a ton of damage. And so, and these do a lot of damage too, these single target attacks. And so adding additional damage onto this team, I do think would be useful. I think that's kind of sorely missing outside of maybe Grakos. Um, and I was gonna say, well, he's a spirit, but they're both spirits, so it wouldn't help against magic affinity or anything like that. But I would like an additional damage dealer, someone that's gonna increase my damage output a bit. Actually, that's the one place where Crew Traxa is not horrible at. She actually does an okay. She doesn't do a ton of damage, but she doesn't. She doesn't like. Obviously, she doesn't weak hit because she's void. But none of her hits are weak, is what I want to say. Right? They're not super strong. They're not doing a ton of damage, but it's enough damage. Like there's enough damage that you see it going down. But still, I would like to have Cheshire on the team, add an actual true damage dealer outside of Gracchus, and see some great things happening. Moving on to the Undead Horde. Oof, man, I had this was my first faction where I was pulling legendaries from shards, and I was pulling them left and right. They just weren't very good. So I got Eligius and Harvest Jack, and I got Eligius again. So I have two Eligius and a Harvest Jack. Now I have many more. And then this faction is much stronger because of it. I do think there's a few legendaries here that I would love to have, whether we're talking about Fabian, who was a anniversary fusion, if my understanding is correct. And then we also have Sifi and Rotos, who were a Valentine's pairing. And these are all great champs. Then you also have Heracles, who's the faction unity, is pretty good as well. But I would actually go with Rotos. I think all four of those are phenomenal champions, and I would take any of those four. But for me personally, I would prefer Rotos. I think it's quite a bit of utility here. Um, Tricky to tell, but I think he does quite a bit. He does just have this, it's just an A1, it's just an attack, but there's a chance that he gets an extra turn. Not a huge chance, but there's a chance of it. So I think that's useful when you're cycling 2 turns, because this is on a 3-turn cooldown, it's on a 2-turn cooldown, so you get this attack, and then you might be able to cycle through an extra turn there as well. But he's got this ability to destroy the opponent's max HP, and that's a huge amount. 20% is insane, right? And then he adds it to his own, and so I think that's extremely useful. Now it is a little bit different when we're discussing bosses. Um, it's more 30% of the damage inflicted instead, so it's not just 20% of their max HP, which would be insane. And probably make him one of the strongest champs just in the game period. But still, that's a really good hit. And then he's also got the ability to ignore unkillable and block damage. And so I think with those two aspects, I would love to have Rotos on my roster. Can't even think of what his passive is, honestly. It's an extra turn. This okay. I mean, some more possibilities. Get extra turns, but I love these two skills, and I think for my roster, that would be what I need the most. I'm struggling right now, so Undead Horde is one of the factions that I have not beaten stage 21 of Faction Wars yet. So there are 5, but that includes Dark Elves, which is about to be done. So aside of them is 4. Undead Horde is one of them, and the thing that I'm having an issue with is killing the boss. I'm struggling with that. I have a lot of legendaries. Um, but none of them are. Oh, you know what? I do have Calamitous, so it's like I do have a damage dealer, so I do have Calamitous. The outside of my legendaries they're not doing much damage, and so like and I don't have any revivers. So by the time I'm killing the boss, like somebody's dead. I'm not able to kill the boss fast enough. So a reviver would be nice as well. Is that what CP is? Yeah, CP is has a single target revive, so she would also be nice. But I would just prefer Rotos. I think, this is specifically built for like killing off bosses and things, and that's what I'm struggling with. So I'd actually really love to pull a Rotos. Moving on to Dark Elves, who is the faction I'm getting ready to finish their faction wars. I just got Mithrala, so I'm looking forward to being able to now make my way through faction wars. Stage 21. Now, there's a number of free champs here that are incredible. Mithrala being one of them, but also Lydia and Visix. I like all 3 of those, and all 3 of them are free champs, right? So, or the guaranteed champs. As long as you're logging enough, you're gonna get Visix. As long as you're beating not Chimera, what is it, Hydra? Often enough, you get Mithrala, and then Lydia once I finish Faction Wars. But outside of them, I think I'm gonna go with Tramaria. And as I've been saying, all of these AoE stuns or these AoE buff strippers or these AoEs with additional utility, I love them, right? Those are like my favorite moves in the game. And so that and the max HP hits. So a lot of the champs that I most want have some element of that, right? Whether it's Cecilia or Klazag or Rhodos or Odin, etc. It's either going to be a champ where they're doing this max HP damage because it's going to be really helpful when you think about bosses, or they have some sort of AoE stun or AoE buff stripper, which I just love to help me make my way through waves. And so those are the things I look for the most, and Tramaria has that. And so she's also got this AoE deep buff remover, which is sort of the next thing down, right? If I was gonna discuss it, AoE stuns probably my number one when we think about something like this. AoE buff remover is probably my number two, and then AoE debuff remover from allies would be like my number three. And so she's kind of got two of those. Oftentimes, if you have one of them, sometimes that person also has two. I think we've seen that a number of times in some of the champs I've discussed here. But Tramaria, I think would bring tremendous value to my team. Even though I'm finishing up Faction Wars normal here shortly, and I have two more champs I'll be adding not too long in the future. I'm actually working. I'm in my final month now. Before it moves over to Cleoptrix, so I'll be getting Visix in maybe a week or two. And then Lydia, I'm really close to Faction Wars normal completion, so I'll be getting her soon too. So this faction will be stacked for me, and I'm getting Naldua from the fusion. So this faction will be stacked, but still, I think having Tramaria will bring tremendous value. Knights Revenant. Oh my gosh. I'll take any legendary here, right? Can I just please have one? Is anyone? No, but as much as I could use the help from literally any legendary here. Well, I don't know. I'm not. I have Bystofus, and I'm trying to get rid of him. I'm gonna replace him with a rare or something like an uncommon. I'm not thrilled with him. And I think there's some others. I hear some terrible things about Thea. So I guess I wouldn't just take any of them. But I could use the help in this faction, and so I've looked at the kits of quite a number of these champs quite a few times over the last couple months, just wishing I would get one of them. Like, please let me get one of these guys in Knights Revenant. I need the help. But there's a few standouts, I would say, whether that's Georgid, Queen of Hearts is phenomenal, and Cora. And Cora is might be number two on my list, honestly. Even without Narcissus, I could really use her. And she was kind of like almost like a 1A for me. She was right on the edge. RX, I heard he's a free champ. I think he does a lot too. Right, the AoE stun, um, which I love. So that he does have a buff removal, but it's like, oh yeah, from each target. Yep. So he's got the AoE buff removal too. So that's what I was saying, right? Like oftentimes you see one, you kind of see another, and I love those, right? So Eric's, I'm excited to get him eventually. I don't know how he's okay. He's rated really well. No, I'm excited to get him. From my understanding, he comes after Cleoptrix, so I have to make my way through Cleoptrix first. I don't know how long that's going to take. I heard somebody say it could take 2 years. I don't know if they were joking or they were serious. That sounds like it would be awful. But regardless, I will eventually, as long as the game lasts and I'm still playing it, I will eventually get him. So he's not on this list. Ankar would be sort of my 1A that would be on this list, but my number one is actually Benalicia, Throne Mother. Now, she's not doing a ton, but she does some things that I care about quite a bit. So she's got the AoE buff removal. I had mentioned that this is going to be something that's going to be a lot of the champs that I want. I love these types of moves. So she's got that. Not a ton going on here. She does place a weaken, which is nice. But I think most importantly for me, I love this, but most importantly for me is this revive all dead allies. For my Knights Revenant, do I even have a reviver? I can't think of who my reviver. Yes. Oh, Rector. He's not bad. He's the one with the single target revive. I was throwing that on Tagore. Poor Tagore. He's got the heal all allies and the single target revive. Okay. All right. So I had him confused with Tagore when I was going through the orcs. But him or her, you gotta say it right now. Or maybe I don't know. But regardless, but I would still prefer Venalicia. Um, I think, this brings a ton of utility. Now, Rector Drath has a heal. She does not. So Rector Drath would still be useful. Yeah, she could heal herself, I guess, when with the pain link. But outside of that, she's not really healing anyone, so it's not like Rector Drath would go away. But I would like to have her revive. I think 2 revives are probably something that's going to be needed. Plus, his AOE is just going to be useful. I don't know if she alone would actually help me get through stage 21. To be perfectly honest, I don't think she would. But she is the champ that I want the most from this faction. Now, thinking about getting through stage 21, I think others would come more in handy. I think Queen of Hearts is probably the strongest out of the. Okay, looks like the people agree. When I'm reading the kit, I feel like she's probably the strongest out of there's the removal buffs. She has this team attack, which I love. Um, also fills turn meters. Okay, so she doesn't have both the buff removal and another similar move, but she does have a ton of utility here. I think she would be actually much more helpful for me, but I just want Venalicia more. I think I really like this, and I like the revival of Dead Allies. I wouldn't be able to get rid of Rector Drath just yet with her. I just don't have enough champs in this faction to do that. But still, I think going forward should be very helpful for this faction, for my count in general. As we go down to dwarves, I have a ton of champs here. But even though I have a ton of champs here, there's still a ton of champs left that I don't have that I would love to have. And again, the faction unity champ is always gonna be great. I don't know how wonderful this one is. Or use all debuffs, which is great. Moves all buffs, okay. It's a single target though. But still, he's not my most wanted anyways. I just wanted to double check some of the stuff on him. I think some of the champs that are towards the top of my list are Newt or Nut. Senna, actually, I hear a lot of great things about Senna. But I feel like she's got a lot of similarities with Hilvi that I kind of honestly feel like I don't really need her. Right? She's got a heal there. She's got some heals. Turn me to fill and a revive. I thought she actually brought something else. But, I have the revive here. Maybe she's not similar. Maybe it's just the fact that they both have the full team revive and I already have that. But I do feel like, I don't really need her at this moment in the faction. I hear incredible things about her. People say she's one of the best dwarves. I believe it. I'll take their word for it. However, I don't feel that I need her, and I actually like Hildy quite a bit. She also has this similar to a freeze. I mean, similar to a AOE stun, but it's an AOE freeze. Kind of same general idea there. So, for me, Sun is not really on the list, but I do hear great things about her. Acrizia is an interesting one. I think this faction, my most wanted from this faction is kind of interesting because it's kind of two. It's kind of two of them. Acrizia is one of them. She's not the person I'm actually going to name here. But in all honesty, if I was just thinking about an all of raid, what are her reviews? Okay, that's good to see. Sometimes I could read the kit and I could take something away from the kit and I could think it's excellent. But in theory, it might sound excellent, but in practice, it's not. And I don't have the champ, so I can't actually see it in motion. So sometimes I have to check these ratings just to verify my thinking of the kit. But it's good. So it's good to know that people agree. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going crazy here. She's got some of the things I mentioned before, right, with this enemy max HP, and she's got it in every single attack. Like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Right, and she's doing additional stuff like decreasing defense, but she's also placing shields on the team to kind of keep them alive. And just on this champion, but still, that's not the important thing. The important thing is this enemy max HP, just like on every single one of her skills. Yeah, just thinking about the game overall, she's probably in my top 5 most wanted in the entire game. However, when I'm thinking about faction-based content, and this is where things get a little tricky, because it would probably be Acrizia when I think about just Raid Shadow Legends overall. But since I'm going faction by faction, I'm also thinking about things from a faction standpoint. And from a faction standpoint, she's not my most wanted from this faction. From an overall raid standpoint, she's in my top 5. From this faction, she's also in my top 5, but she's not my number 1. And I'm actually gonna give that to Tormund. Uh, I was just talking about Hilvy and how much I love Hilvy, and she's constantly calling Tormund in to use his skills and to attack. There's not a lot. There's nothing in here at all that discusses Hilvy. But when we look at Hilvy's kit, I think all of her skills pretty much. Well, maybe not their revive, but these two skills are calling in Tormund to activate one of his skills, and then in Tormund's kit, is it this one? Yes. Not only is he constantly being called in by Hilvy, but this also instantly activates whenever an enemy is under both freeze and HP burn. And now, I have to go back through and I got to see where I'm getting HP burn from. But just, every time they're taking damage from the HP burn, and they're frozen, he's going to be coming in and attacking on top of that. So I have to go through and see where the HP burn is coming from. Quick glance, I don't see anything at a quick glance where it would be coming in. But anyways, I'm assuming there has to be somewhere that it does come from in this faction. You know what? I just thought of someone. Is it Isabel? Oh no, she's got bombs. She has bombs. Okay. So it was Isabel I was thinking of, but those are bombs, not HP burn. So yeah, so I'm not entirely sure where the HP burn is coming from. Oh, Geomancer does have an HP burn. Yeah, Geomancer has an HP burn. But regardless, I don't know if that's where that would actually be coming from or not. I feel like there's got to be another character that has it within dwarves. But I just like how often he's going to be coming in for extra attacks. Even if we disregard this call out in his own kit, just because of the fact that I don't know where the HP burn is coming from. If we ignore some of the HP burn stuff and just focus on the fact that he's going to constantly be getting called in, and he has a chance of placing freeze himself. He's going to be constantly getting called in all the time to do. Is it these two? Who's she calling him in for? So I know it's Rimfire there, but then who's she? Blizzard Rage. Okay, this is the other one. Blizzard Rage. This one. So she's going to be calling him in to do these quite a bit, and this is on her A1, so he's going to be doing this AoE often. So he's constantly coming in freezing people, and then this is also an AoE that blocks buffs. Yeah, and so there's also a chance of a provoke, but I mean, oh, if they're not under freeze. Okay, well that's interesting. I'm not quite sure how this works. He doesn't weak hit because he's a void. Um, but I'm thinking through this. I feel like everybody's gonna be frozen. So I don't know if the provoke will ever really be used. I guess if they have really high resistance, but then can they resist the provoke is the question. That's where my confusion is coming into play because I'm thinking I'm like, man, how many times is he getting called for all this stuff? And then the freezes that Hilvy can do herself. I don't know if the provoke would ever come into play. If people are able to resist the freeze, I assume they can also resist the provoke. Definitely correct me if I'm misunderstanding that. But regardless of any of that, I just love how often this guy would be getting called in to attack, and the fact that he's got some AoEs and he's going to be doing quite a bit of damage out there. And he can also bring himself back somewhere. Is that in his passive? Yeah, so revives the champion to 100% HP. So he can bring himself back too. I think having him on my squad, and that'll save Hilvy her revive. I just think that would be a lot of fun, just being able to constantly call this guy in for attack for faction wars and faction based content. So that's why I would pick him as my number 1 for this list. Although, if we look outside of dwarves and we're not thinking about like faction based content, if we're just thinking about raid in general, it would actually be Acrizia. But I'll give the bump to Tormund because I'm sure if I ever have a discussion where I'm like my 5 most wanted champs in all of raid, Acrizia would be on that list. So I'll give Tormund his shout out here. Let him get his shine. Looking at Shadowkin, oh my gosh, my Shadowkin is stacked. I love my Shadowkin. They're even if I had no champs here, they're just my favorite faction, just aesthetically. Um, and I think I recently heard, I forget who said it, maybe it was Nubs or someone, but someone had said, Shadowkin is like everyone's favorite. So that was great to see. I'm not alone in that regard. I think this faction is phenomenal aesthetically, and I think they just have a ton of amazing champs. So they don't even all fit on the page at one time, where I have to go down just to see them. Um, but with that said, there are champs out there that I do not have that would be useful for my account. And that includes Tetsuya, who is the Faction Unity champ. A lot of great things there. But he's not my pick. Shu Zhen, also an amazing champ. I think she's got the fast 30%. She does a ton of great things as well. But really, I'm going to focus on Yumiko. This is sort of my choice and who I would want to get. Although those other two that I mentioned also phenomenal. But she brings in quite a bit of utility. For some reason, I don't know why, but I thought she was going to have the AOE stun here. Um, but she does bring in a ton of other utility as well. I feel like now I have to reread her kit because I was like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's go ahead and reread the kit. Attacks enemy 2 times. Steals turn meter. I think that's phenomenal. Heals the champion by 30%. That's great. The hex debuff, very useful. Well, there's this decreased cooldowns. I guess that's probably the thing that stuck out to me the most when I was going through the kits. So I did arrive at this list. I'm familiarized myself with a lot of these kits just over the last few months, but I came up with this final list sort of last night. And I think this is probably what stood out to me. Because as I'm looking through now, that is the one thing that kind of stands out to me is this cooldown. That would be useful, but to be honest with you, I might actually change my answer again. It's the second time I'm doing this in this video. Yumiko, you're great. I love this skill cooldown, and I'm sure that would come in handy a ton. But I'm not sure if that's who I would actually ultimately pick here. And I don't know if I would pick Shu Zhen either. I mean, she's great as well. Got some turn meter manipulation. Man, I have so many great champs already. It's kind of in this faction. I have so many great champs already that I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, they're great, but what are they actually adding to my faction? And I honestly feel like, as great as they are, would they have a starting spot in my starting five if I was as I move into Faction Wars Hard? Wow, she's got 5 on everything. Now again, phenomenal, but I don't know if she would get a starting spot in my starting five. It might actually be Tetsuya. you know, those other champs might be individually better, but when I'm thinking about the roster that I have with Shadowkin and who's going to benefit my roster the most in Shadowkin, Tetsuya might actually be the winner in this case. So I'm going to change my choice for the second time in this video, and I'm also going to choose my second Faction Unity champ here. So he's got this turn meter fill, which we saw on both Shu Zhen and on Yumiko. But he does other things as well. We're really gonna get to his Unity here, and this is really the stuff that's always gonna stand out 100% of the time for these Faction Unity champs. It's not all. Sometimes they also have grade A1s and A2s as well. This is really where the bulk of what they're gonna do for you is gonna be here, and their passive, and also their lead, because they get essentially 2 leads, or auras, I guess we call it here, leads in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. But he's got this chance for this True Fear. Cannot be resisted or blocked, but we're gonna have all 3. It's not just gonna be 1 or just 2. So increase the damage inflicted by the skill between this champion's speed and the target speed. That's interesting. I did not realize that. That's interesting though. That's tells you right there you really need to build his speed up. And it also attacks all of this is the part I kind of remember where it can turn into an AoE because it's a single target attack, but it turns into an AoE And this also has the True Fair Solanic. So it's an AoE True Fair, and it's for 2 turns. It's for 2 turns. Each turn has a 50% chance of them missing that turn, and also losing that skill that they tried to use because it's a True Fear, not just a fear. Um, but it's as good as an AoE stun because you have 50% chance of them losing their turns, but it's for 2 turns. So just on average, you're going to lose at least one of those turns. So it's kind of an AoE stun, which I really love about it. This is the part I remember. I actually did not remember this. The second thing, I think that's kind of cool, where it can increase the damage based on the difference between the speed. So you just got to build the speed up quite a bit. Reading that now, I'm like, oh, that's actually really cool. I don't remember that, but I like it. But this is the part that really stood out to me and that I love and think would bring a lot of utility. In addition, just on the passive, again, this is where a lot of the bulk of these faction unity champs are going to come from. So we do have like a turn meter increase, which I think is also on his, yeah, it's on his A1. But this is also what kind of stood out about Shuzen. And in a way, Yumiko, even though she's got the skill cooldown, I mean, in a way, that's what you're doing with turn meter increase, right? Because you're cycling through your allies' turns so they can then use the skill and then move on to and quickly get back to whatever skill they were using before because that takes down a cooldown. And so I do think this brings a lot of utility here. And then the fact that he's got 2 leads, and one of those leads is a speed. And this is a speed that you can be able to bring with you in faction wars, but also beyond when we're talking about siege and other game modes as well. It's going to be extremely useful in all of those cases. Speed is really the most important thing. And it's a lower speed because it's an all battle speed, and it's 19% instead of 20%, but it's still good, right? For everything outside of arena, this is great. But also your crit rate when you have Shadowkin with you. So I think I would actually go with Tetsuya the Deliverer in this last spot here. Shuzen Yumiko, really good. There's a lot of turn meter manipulation, which I like. Here, that cooldown reset, which is great. It's on a 5-turn cooldown itself, but it does help quite a bit there. And it's something that we discussed with like Donnie and with Fighty as well. Lizardman, I do think that's great, and that's probably what made me initially choose her. But as I'm going through her kit again and I'm rereading it, I'm trying to think, okay, how useful would this actually be for what is probably my most stacked faction? I have both mythicals and I have a ton of incredible legendaries: Harima, Yukimasa, Riho, Leo. Like, how do you make your way into the starting 5? I don't know that this alone would make her break into my starting 5. And so while she is great, and while Shuzen is also great, I don't really foresee either of them breaking into my top 5 in this faction. Tetsuya, however, I feel brings a lot of the same elements they do, just with the turn meter manipulation, at least the turn meter manipulation of a Shuzen. You figure, by the time you work your way back around to using the skill again after his 5-turn cooldown, you would have been able to impact turn meter enough given his A1 as well as his passive here and everything else that's happening. He would have manipulated turn meter enough that over the course of the fight, it's essentially another skill cooldown because they've been able to take so many additional turns. So honestly think between the 3 of them, Tetsuya would have, and I don't even know if Tetsuya would make my starting 5, honestly, but I think between the 3 of them, Tetsuya would actually have the better chance of making my starting 5. Now, if we think outside of faction-based content, that might have been where I was leaning towards Yumiko a bit more because I'm like, okay, well, this cooldown reduction is for everyone, right? This isn't just for Shadowkin. This can be used anywhere in the game. And that's probably what I was leaning towards. But as I am looking at this faction by faction, and so I do want to take faction into account, even though it's not the only thing. I want to take broader raid into account as well. Just given the fact I am looking faction by faction, I think it is important that I look at it from a faction standpoint as well and take that into account. I just think Tetsuya is going to get the edge there. So I'm changing my answer to Tetsuya. He is going to be my second Unity champ after Fina that I would like to see added to my account. Yumiko, Shuzen, guys are great. I would love to add you to my account as well at some point, but Tetsuya is getting the thumbs up in this case. Moving on to Sylvan Watchers, another stacked faction for my roster. Uh, but there's a lot of heals here. Similar to my Lizardman, there's a lot of heals here. Not everyone is a healer, but a lot of them are healers. And with that in mind, I did want to kind of get away from that. I think there's a lot of great champs here. Whether you're talking about um, Diamhe, I don't know how to say her name, or quite a few others, but a lot of them come with these heals. Um, so for me, the two that I was really kind of looking at were Emic and Vestel, who is a brand new champ. With Emic, I think he's really cool. He brings in shields, and he's also got a provoke somewhere or taunt. Um, got a taunt, which is it's probably even better than a provoke. Yeah, it is better than a provoke. I think. You know what? Don't quote me on that. But they kind of do the same thing, right? Like you're forced to attack. So at the end of the day, they kind of do the same thing. But he's defense based. He's placing shields on himself and his allies, and you can increase the value of the shields. So I really like Emic quite a bit. But as I was just mentioning, my Sylvan Watchers is kind of stacked with healers at the moment, and so this would be very, very defensive focused faction if I were to say this is my most wanted. And that's not something I would necessarily want. I do think this guy is useful for probably a ton of content. Yeah, right. Like beyond faction wars, he's going to be useful in other content just because of the taunts and the shields and all of that. I was kind of thinking about also using him in my clan boss teams with Wixwell and Titus, where he's not just adding on shields, but also increasing the value of said shields. I just think that's going to be extraordinarily useful. And then if he's doing taunts where he's being attacked outside of AoEs, but if he's being attacked instead of Titus, that's going to leave the shield on Titus for him to do even more damage because his shield isn't being chipped away on. So I do think he would be extremely useful in areas like that. But when I think about things from the perspective of the faction, um, it would be he would be used, right? Because I would probably just remove a healer and add him in. But it's very defensive based. It would still take a long time to get through the content because I'm really relying on Balar and Lemnisci, and I'm rebuilding my Lemnisci to be more of an Amius killer. That's one of the things I'm hoping to do now that my Sylvan Watcher's normal faction wars is over. I'm re-gearing Lemnisci. I'm going to focus her on Amius, so she's not really necessarily going to be built. Not that her Amius build can't also be helpful in faction wars, but she's going to be built specifically for somewhere else. Oh, my battery is dying. Um, Let me pause this for a second and plug my battery in. All right, and we're back. So, as I was saying, Emic would be extraordinarily useful overall, but I just think when I think about things from a faction perspective, I don't think he would add the most utility to my roster from that perspective. In that case, it would be more Vestel, right? She's got more offense based stuff going on here. A lot of single target. She does have this AoE. A lot of single target damage happening along with an AoE. She does some really cool things with this AoE weaken, which is huge. And I think just in general, given the makeup of my my Sylvan Watchers faction, so many other champs, and this isn't a hit on Vestella at all. She's actually really cool and highly rated as well. I wouldn't say she's my favorite, um, or even the champ that I am most excited about, but she is the champ that would actually add the most to my faction. When you think about like a Nyame or someone along those lines, they're just adding less because they're doing something that I currently already get from other faction, from other Sylvan Watchers champs. When you think about Elva, Glycade, Paydrag, even King, I don't really like this guy very much. But even King Galkobar has like, this continual heal and a shield. Um, and so thinking about everything, this lady with more heals, right? More heals on everything. Um, with that in mind, I just feel like I need to stay away from the Names of the world. And even to an extent, the MX, right? Because it's still more defense based is still more staying alive based. It's not. It's less focused on killing, and that's what I would need to do with this faction going forward as I go move into faction wars hard. And so with that in mind, I think Vestel is kind of the answer there, almost as a process of elimination. She's a cool champ just on her own. Looks phenomenal. I love this cape. Just looks great. Got the little antlers that are kind of just part of this faction at this point. It's kind of on everybody, but it's kind of almost as a process of elimination because I look at the best champs left, Insensa, Niame, Emic, Vestel, all the best ones left. But she's the only one that's kind of offense based out of that grouping. And so she kind of wins by default there. She is in that top echelon. When I'm saying the top four champs that I don't have, she's one of those top four. It just so happens that she is also the only one that's offense based. And so she kind of wins by default. That's no shade to her. Again, she is in my top four left in this faction that I want. But it's just kind of the way that the cookie crumbled that put her on top. And so for Sylvan Watchers, Vestel, it would be my most wanted from this faction. All right, and I've probably been talking here for quite some time. An hour and a half. This is wow. This is now my longest video, and this was the one that I thought I was going to make it the shortest by not spending so much time in the kits. But it is what it is, right? I'll get better with timing as time goes on, and it's 1:40 here, 1:40 p.m. I was trying to get into the gym. I didn't realize that I was going to go over a half an hour. I didn't think it was going to be an hour and a half, but it is what it is. I was actually going to try to go to the gym at 12:30. It's already 1:30, but that still works. I'll get into the gym now. But anyways, thanks for coming to Miedo Gaming, for listening to me ramble on about my most wanted champs in each of the factions. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to making more content soon. Take care.